All right, everyone ready to dive in? You sent in a ton of stuff on bullshit jobs, articles, studies, even pieces of that David Graeber book.
It's a hot topic, that's for sure.
Seems like it's really struck a nerve.
Yeah.
So we're going to do a deep dive today, really get into it.
Sounds good.
But before we go any further, got to start with the basics. What exactly are we talking about when we say bullshit job?
Well, it all started with Graeber, right? He just kind of noticed. A lot of people seem to be doing jobs that looked, well, kind of pointless.
Like that story about the guy whose whole job was moving his boss's office down the hall.
Yeah, with all the paperwork and rigmarole, just moving it.
And it wasn't just one guy, was it? Graeber kept running into people who felt like their jobs were basically useless.
Exactly. And even harmful sometimes, you know?
So it's not just that the job looks silly from the outside.
No, it's about how the worker feels. That's key. It's got to be a job they feel doesn't really mean anything, doesn't contribute, like it shouldn't even exist.
It's like that quote Graeber uses, Dostoevsky, right?
Right.
About the prisoner moving sand back and forth.
Oof, yeah. Powerful image, huh? Really gets at that feeling of futility, like, what's the point?
It makes you think about the toll it takes on people.
Mm.
You know, doing something you think is meaningless day after day.
No kidding. Graeber calls it psychological violence, which, I mean, it kind of is, right?
Big time. You spend 40 hours a week on something you think is BS. How can you feel good about yourself?
Exactly. And the weird thing is, it's not just low-paying jobs, right? This feeling pops up even in high-powered positions, the ones everyone thinks are so great.
So we've got all these people stuck in jobs they think are meaningless. The question is why? Why are these bullshit jobs everywhere?
Well, Graeber looks at it from a few angles: individual, structural, and political.
Let's start with the individual. Why would anyone do this kind of job? Put up with it.
Good question. There's this psychologist, Karl Groos, talked about pleasure at being the cause. Basically, we humans, we like to feel like we're having an impact, you know?
Even if it's a pointless impact.
Yeah, it's about feeling useful, having a purpose. And in our society, work is such a big part of that.
I mean, Graeber has those crazy stories, right? The guy forwarding spam emails, the HR assistant playing video games all day.
But they felt like they had to keep up appearances, pretend they were busy, important.
Maybe scared of losing the job? Or maybe scared of facing how empty it all is.
Could be both, probably. But even if we get why individuals do it, why are there so many of these jobs? That's where the bigger picture comes in, the structure of things.
Right, so what's the bigger picture? What's going on that makes these jobs so common? Spill the beans.
Well, it's more than just, like, the service industry growing or whatever, though that's part of it. Graeber actually points to this thing he calls managerial feudalism.
Managerial feudalism.
Whoa, okay. That sounds kind of intense. What's that all about?
Okay, so think about, like, feudal times, right?
Yeah.
Kings and knights and all that, lots of levels of power.
Yeah, super hierarchical.
Exactly. And Graeber says a lot of modern companies, especially big ones, they're starting to look like that.
So instead of, you know, making stuff or actually doing things, it's all about who's in charge of who. Pretty much. You get all these managers and their main job is just to manage other managers.
It's like a pyramid scheme of uselessness. Everyone climbing the ladder, but the ladder's not going anywhere.
And that ties back to what we were saying about people wanting to feel useful, right? Even a pointless job can give you status in that kind of system.
So everyone's playing this game of pretend, acting important, while the actual work doesn't even matter that much.
And that's where Graeber's 5 types of bullshit jobs come in. They really show how ridiculous this whole thing gets.
Oh yeah, those are great. The flunkies, the goons, duct tapers, box tickers, and taskmasters. It's like a whole guide to office dysfunction.
He really nailed the names, didn't he? Each one perfectly sums up what that kind of job is all about.
So let's break them down. Starting with flunkies. Those are the folks who basically exist to make someone else look good, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're all about image, projecting power, like those receptionists Graeber talks about, sitting at empty desks all day, just for show.
Like human props in the corporate theater.
Totally. Then you've got the goons. These are the ones whose work might be good for their boss, but it's actually bad for everyone else.
So like telemarketers, those pushy salespeople, or some corporate lawyers, maybe.
Yep. And certain kinds of PR people, too. Their job is to serve their client no matter what, even if it means being unethical or hurting people.
Okay, that's pretty dark. Then there's the duct tapers.
Hmm.
Are those the ones who are always fixing problems that shouldn't even exist?
You got it. They're cleaning up messes caused by other people's incompetence or just bad systems. Remember that story about the professor who needed a safety officer to move books before a shelf could be fixed?
Oh, man. Yeah. It's like the whole world's held together by duct tape at this point.
Hmm.
Talk about frustrating.
And speaking of frustrating, let's not forget the box tickers. These are the ones who basically just create busy work, usually to satisfy some dumb rule.
Like filling out forms that nobody reads.
Exactly. It's all about looking busy, even if the work itself is totally meaningless. Like that care home worker Graeber mentions, doing these pointless interviews and forms that just got thrown away.
Geez, that's sad. And finally, the taskmasters. Those are the folks who just delegate, creating even more BS jobs. The puppet masters of the uselessness pyramid.
Right. And the thing is, all these types of bullshit jobs, they're all so different, but they all have that same feeling underneath, you know? Pointless, absurd.
Like the whole system is just designed to keep people busy, even if it doesn't actually achieve anything.
It can seem that way, yeah. But by talking about it, by bringing it out in the open, Graeber's done us a favor. He's making us think about what work really means, what we value as a society.
And maybe even start imagining something different, right? A better way of doing things.
Definitely. But before we go there, we got to zoom out a bit. Remember that third level Graeber talks about? The political one. That's where things get even more interesting.
Okay, so how do governments and policies play into this whole bullshit jobs thing? Are they making it worse? So we've got this whole system of bullshit jobs, people feeling like their work doesn't really matter. Where do we go from here? Is there any way out of this mess?
Tough question, for sure. But Graeber, he does have some ideas. Especially when you think about automation, you know?
Robots come in for our jobs. That's the big fear, right? But will they get rid of the BS jobs or just create new ones? Like, will we all end up managing the robots who are managing other robots?
Yeah, that's a possibility. But Graeber's point is the tech itself isn't the problem. It's our attitude toward work, you know? This idea that we're only valuable if we're producing, no matter what we're actually doing.
So maybe instead of saying, how can we automate this? We should be asking, should this even exist?
Exactly. It's a big change in thinking, but that's what we need if we want work to actually be meaningful.
There's that sci-fi story Graeber talks about, right? Where the robots end up doing everything and humans turn themselves into these shiny discs, just existing in this automated utopia. Kind of funny, but also kind of creepy. Is that where we're headed? Just giving up on meaning altogether?
I don't think so. Graeber believed we have a choice. It starts with questioning what we've been told about work. Like all those beliefs about busyness being good and idleness being bad.
Whole Protestant work ethic thing, right?
Yeah.
Got to be grinded all the time.
Yeah. What if we saw work differently? What if it wasn't just about output, but about creativity, connection, contributing to something bigger?
I like that. But it feels so far away from how things are now. How do we even start to change those values? The whole system feels so stuck.
It's a huge challenge, yeah. But Graeber reminds us, change starts with small acts of rebellion, you know? Individuals saying no and demanding something better.
So maybe step one is just recognizing the bullshit jobs, calling them out, refusing to accept them.
Absolutely. And then talking about it, like we're doing right now. Asking those tough questions about what we really value, what a good life looks like, even if it's not the traditional way.
Well, this deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about. Maybe look at my own work differently. And hopefully it's done the same for you. Where do you see bullshit jobs, your life, and the world around you? And what can you do, even small things, to create more meaning, more purpose? It's time to start challenging those old ideas and demanding something better. Thanks for listening, everyone.